So now let's go ahead and take a brief second to just go ahead and get our routes and layouts set up and ready to go. So first, let's move our welcome page into a separate directory called pages inside of our views directory. So let's go ahead and create a new folder and let's call this pages. And then we'll just want to move our welcome page directly into there. Next, we'll need to move into our routes to make that adjustment. So render just changes to pages/welcome. Cool, so we should be good there. From now on, we're gonna create all of our pages inside of the pages directory, just to kind of keep them separated from everything else. Now for our layout, we're gonna do something a little bit different. Since we're focusing on components within this series, we're not going to use your typical layout to create our actual layout. Instead, we're gonna use a component to create our layout. So let's go ahead and get our components set up here. Within our project, we're gonna want our components to reside underneath the views directory inside of a new folder. And we'll want this folder to be called components. We'll do a slash. Now we can place all of our layouts inside of a separate folder inside of components called layouts. And then we'll just call this app.edge. So what this did is created a components directory with a layouts directory inside of it and a file inside of it called app.edge. Within our app.edge, let's copy all of the HTML markup from our welcome page and paste it directly in here. For the actual contents, we're going to have a div with a class of max width 4XL, MX auto, and MY8. Inside of here, we're going to have kind of a header section. So we'll do header, class, BG, gray, 100, P6, negative MX6, margin bottom 6, and rounded MD. Inside of our header, we're going to have kind of a breadcrumb. So if we're not on the home page, we want to display a link back to the home page. So we're going to do if title does not equal home, end our if statement, then we'll just display anchor back to that home page with a class of text extra small and call that home. And then underneath here, we're going to want to display our H1 for our actual header, class text 2XL, font bold, and we'll display our title there. And then underneath this header section is where we're going to want to display the actual page contents. Now, typically within a layout, you would use a section for this. However, since we're inside of a component, all we need to do is use the main slot for this. To render out the main slot, we just do 3 backticks, await, slots, and then call the main function. The main slot is always going to be provided even if you don't provide any content into the component itself. So we don't need to worry about this being undefined or null here. And the 3 backticks as opposed to the 2 backticks allows us to plop raw HTML into the page, which we'll need to do for the slots. Cool, so we should have our layout all set up and ready to go. Let's dive back into our welcome page and give it a run. So we can get rid of everything inside of here. And we actually have a couple of options on how to actually go about rendering out our component. So we can either use the component tag and go to our components/layouts/app, give it our title of home, end our component, and then do slot content here. So that should work just fine. So we can go ahead and dive back into our browser. Looks like we have an error from whenever we move the page. Just give the page a refresh. That should be fixed. And there we go. So we have our basic layout here. We have our header section up here rendering out home. And then we have our slot content here. So our layout is working just fine as a component. However, with the way that we called this, we used the component tag to render this out. Since we named this folder components instead of our views directory, we're actually able to use the component directly as a tag. And that's because adonis.js renders those components inside of the views components directory globally as edge tags. The example that they give in the documentation here is a button. So they have a button at resources views components button.edge, looks like this. And they're showing that you're able to render that out by just reaching directly for button off of the @ character, referencing it as a tag directly. If you're using folders, as we are with our layout, you're able to reach directly inside of nested folders using dot to separate out between those folders and then reach inside of it directly for a file. You have a couple of examples here. So if you have form input.edge, you reach for it via form.input. Tooltip would be tool capital T tip. Checkout form would be checkout capital F form.input. And for our case, if we dive back into our file, we can replace our component here with layouts.app. And of course, adding back in our home title. And then to end this out, we just get rid of component from our tag and just have end there. Give that a save and everything should still be working a-okay.